Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick Taking Table. I'm Tyler of Tyler's Trick Taking Table. We went to Dice Tower West. Whew! It was a wild time. It's the second time being there. I had a panel again, and I was billed as Tyler again, which I love. And this time, I got to do it with the amazing Wray and the amazing Amy and Maggie from ThinkerThemer. It was a wonderful panel. It's unlisted in the description if you want to check it out. I filmed it at kind of a center angle this time, rather than last time when I tried to film my panel where it was kind of next to me and off to the side. And sadly, I missed a little bit of the video, and I think it cut off also a little bit of the screen projector, but I'll try to make this look as good as possible. Dice Tower West was amazing. I got to run a bunch of Dice Tower official events, some trick-taking events with the amazing Wray. We came up with a lot of fun ideas like contests and also a duplicate sale tournament, which was wild and very hard to do specifically with the game sale. So I'll cover all of that wildness. Also, someone showed up wearing my face on their clothes. Wild. That'll be in the montage for sure. It was an absolute trip. It was so amazing. Got to meet so many wonderful people, play so many wonderful games with so many wonderful people, do so many wild things. It kind of was maybe the busiest, most eventful con I've ever been to. It really was just nonstop action. It was just absolutely wild. So, too many people to name, but it was amazing playing with everyone. I'll get into more detail in the final thoughts, but thank you so much if we played a game, if you and I just hung out and chatted for a little bit, if you came to the panel. Oh, it means so much. Truly. Can't wait for next year. It is easily becoming so much fun. Just an event that I can't wait for. Every time I'm done with it, I wish it happened again right away. And I think next year is going to be even more exciting. More people coming to play trick-taking. We had a trick-taking banner this year. We got put up, and people would come over, and we always had people playing trick-taking games and kind of a nice hub of come here and just play a quick game or stay for as long as you want. It was so fun. So thank you so much, and thank you so much to Wray. Just absolutely amazing. I can't thank him enough for running this with me and coming up with all these amazing event ideas and just facilitating so many trick-taking games at the banner and welcoming so many people and being on the panel. It was absolutely a joy to do this with him. And thank you so much to Tim Mativier, who runs Dice Tower West, who loves trick-taking games and gave us kind of the affordance to do these events. And Tim and Chris and I have been in talks just to be pushing this kind of Dice Tower West trick-taking culture that, you know what, just come to the con and there's always going to be a hub to play trick-taking games. Come on by. And I have already seen so many familiar faces from last year to this year, and I can't wait for it to just keep growing. It's such a wonderful community. So much fun. And again, thank you so much to Amy and Maggie from ThinkerThemer. They did an amazing job on the panel. It was a top 10 thematic trick-taking games panel, which I thought was a fun mix, you know, ThinkerThemer and thematic and trick-taking. It was a wild panel filled with a lot of wacko Tyler jokes, and not only did they do an amazing job handling the incredibly offbeat flow and style of panel, but it was so much fun to go back and forth with them, and they're just such a joy and so funny. So it was absolutely so wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy, Maggie, and thank you again for coming, chatting, anything. It was a dream. And if you didn't go, hopefully, if you are able to, come on by next year. It really is just so much fun. All right, without further ado, let's go to the montage, and then after final thoughts, where you get to find out, what happened when someone was wearing my face on their clothes, and how did the panel go, and all the wonderful games that I got to play. So thank you so much. Oh, can't wait for next year. All right, bye. Hey, Interrupting Tyler here. Before we go to the montage, I have to say thank you so much to Chris Yee and Mike DeLisio. They very kindly to join the Wild Sale Duplicate Tournament that I mentioned earlier. They made the event. They were wonderful. It was such a joy to have them join a very wild idea. So listen to after the montage to see how well they did. It was quite the tournament. But thank you so much to both of them. Oh, it means so much. Everyone was just so wonderful, and it was so kind that they took time out of their very obviously busy schedule. I mean, it's Dice Tower West, and they are very prominent members of Dice Tower. But it was very nice to them, to join. But I can't talk. Okay, we should probably just go to the montage. Thank you so much, Mike and Chris. Okay, see you soon. Bye. Well, there you go. A little nutshell montage for you. Wild. Dice Tower West was absolutely wild. As a con itself, for me personally, it's fascinating because I have the panel, which I've said before, I'm very nervous to do public speaking. So before the panel, the con is kind of this feeling of a little anxiety and anxious for me because I'm nervous. I want it to go well. And then after the panel, it's kind of this wild relief and hopefully it went well, right? And then another mix of just gaming with wonderful people and familiar faces, but then also this new element now that Chris, Wray, and I are doing this trick-taking kind of banner and trick-taking events. There's another element of bringing people into trick-taking more and having kind of like a fun hub of showing off trick-taking. So the con itself has a lot of moving parts. It means a lot of different things to me now, and they're all exciting and all equally fun, and we'll get into them. But first, I want to say thank you so much to Chris again for just being the best. We had a lot of events lined up, and it was wonderful to see how they went. The panel specifically was an absolute hoot. Again, check out the description for that. It was just so much fun having him and me at the banner, just playing games, but also running different things and seeing how trick taking can be in competitions and design stuff and also panels, and it was really, really fun to explore, and I can't wait next year to hopefully do it again and come up with some other really fun designs. I think what we noticed was a lot of people would show up and they would have their own design. So I think maybe having dedicated time for that to happen more, just having a lot of like, yeah, bring your prototype and we'll play them, because that would be really, really fun to facilitate that. I think Chris and I both are huge proponents of people designing games and getting out there and just putting, their works into the world. And I think trick taking is a wonderful way to do that. In fact, Chris speaks on this at the end of the panel if you want to check it out. I think it cuts off a little bit at the end, but he makes a very, very wonderful, very heartfelt, just plea of sorts to make a game, and it really resonates, especially with me. So I cannot wait for next year and hopefully adding some of that to the trick taking panel. This is going to be a wild one. There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to kind of go in order. Again, I have like the games, but also like the events lined up and wild things that happened at the con itself. So first off, I flew Frontier to Vegas. And Frontier, if you're unfamiliar, is an airline that you can bring a little amount on if you don't want to pay a lot for baggage. And so what I did was I put a little bit on, but I stuffed myself full of board games. I don't know if this is going to show, but I essentially put on a jacket and then was stuffing board games down my stomach, and I tucked my shirt in. It looked wild. I think everyone knew exactly what was going on, but it was a great way to start the con, just on an absolutely wild journey where I had corners of boxes poking out of each and every crevice of my body. But once I got there, it was absolutely wonderful. So the panel was on Friday, and I got there kind of late Wednesday, and Thursday was great because Thursday was a nice way to get not to have too many events. So Chris and I try to schedule a lot of events. So championships, that bridge competition, that bridge tournament, or sale, the duplicate sale tournament, and then also have the panel kind of mixed in nicely, if that made sense. There was a trick-taking banner, which that is so wonderful, that Tim got us, that we put in a designated spot in the extra gaming room, to where it was turned to where you walked in. You could see it kind of a little bit far, kind of in the distance, and you could walk over. We had a lot of tables to be able to play, and every time I went, there was always people there playing games. So it was so wonderful. We also had, I think, one of the bigger events that was always kind of gangbusters was the meetups. So just having dedicated times for people to show up and play trick taking was so nice. So that was Thursday. The main thing was a dedicated time to go meet up, and I think we had like 5 or 6 games going at once. So as you can see, hopefully I'll put this image up, but a lot of people just playing games, which was so nice, and a lot of people bringing games that they really wanted to try, or even designs that they wanted to show people. It was a really fun mix of people that were new to trick-taking games, but also just like veterans that I've chatted with online or have messaged me on BGG and things like that. So it was really fun. And the games we played, I think one of the first games I played was Shtick for Shticked. And this one was tough. It's may follow trick taking, but you're trying to do deduction on what trump is. So it's kind of like we've covered Vashtikt before, where in Vashtikt, players are slowly learning what trump is. One person knows it. Same in Shtick for Shtick, but in Shtick for Shtick, you do it through the trick play. In Shtick for Shtick, though, it's fun to say. You have 7 tricks, and you have to use those 7 tricks to slowly kind of guess who, in a way, deduction, use what you're trying to guess what the trump is. And the trump is like 2 things. It's suit and person on the card. And then, so each card has like a rank, a suit, and then kind of a person on the card. And the person is like maybe who did it, and then the suit is like the murder weapon. And so it's like this double deduction thing. Though it's tough is, so you only have 7 tricks. It's a pretty small hand. It's may follow, which already makes it like a little bit loose in the trick play. And also, you usually find out what the trump is maybe halfway in. So the first half of tricks, you're just putting stuff out there. You're not really playing trick taking, you're just kind of just putting stuff out there because you don't know what wins. It's kind of like random guessing for the first trick or 2. And the deduction part is also pretty obvious. Like the first time you would just kind of guess what won because you don't really know what trump is. And you get to a point where it's not too satisfying of a deduction puzzle. That's why I like games like Cryptid or even Sleuth, or what is it called now? Code 777 or Lost Code, Search for Planet X. Like you get those meaty deduction games, Awkward Guess, where you're writing stuff down and you're hunkered into the puzzle. And this never quite got there. So as a deduction game, I felt it a little bit lacking. And then as a trick-taking game, I felt it lacking because the first ones, you're just playing cards to see what the trump is. And then when you finally know what trump is, there's like 2 or 3 tricks at the end. And so it's like not really interesting. I'm not too big of a fan of short-handed or small-handed trick-taking games. And it's tough when once you get to the trick-taking, you know trump, and you can kind of try to start playing trick-taking, you have like 3 tricks. So it kind of fell short on both trick-taking and deduction, which is rough. I'm hoping to play it a little bit more to see if I'm wrong, but I mean, what are you gonna do? So that was, I think, the first game I played. The other ones we played at that session were absolutely wild. We played a game, I'm forgetting what it's called. It's definitely in here. It's this game where you are, it's wild. You will have 2 rows of words in front of you. You're going to roll a die, and that's going to tell you 2 dice, and that's going to tell you which 2 words you have. And then you're going to act out using stick figures what a wrestling move would be that have both of those words in it. So one might be hurricane, and the other one might be rocket, right? So you have 2 actors, you have 2 animals, and you're playing behind a screen, and you can only say 2 words. 1 animal each will have kind of a sound effect that they make. So like if it was a cat, it'd be like meow, but they are bunnies, frogs, and monkeys. And it's interesting because it's a Japanese game. And as you may or may not know, different countries kind of have different, is it onomatopoeias? Or like noises that animals will make. So like in the US, like a cat will make a meow, right? Or a dog will make like a bark or woof or whatever it may be. But in Japan, like a cat makes nyan, right? Like you've heard of nyan cat. But so the monkey and the rabbit make like ki and like pon noises. So you can say ki and pon. And so like for hurricane and rocket, you might be like spinning and go like ki 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 ki. And then like for rocket, you might go like pon and like lift it really, really high. It's a wild game. I had to look it up because I thought I'd give you the title. The game is called Tadaima no Kimarishu wa. It is absolutely wild. And when we were playing, I got the words horror and rocket, I think. And for horror, how do you do horror? So I just decided to scream really loud as the monkey. I forgot that we were at a convention, so I got a lot of tables around us looking at us. Yikes, yeah. So I apologize to everyone near us at Dice Tower West. Next, we played Mesozoic Mayhem, which is by Craig, a wonderful, wonderful viewer of the channel, who reached out and was like, hey, you should play this. It's essentially Skull King or like Wizard, but you can see the suits on the back, and then the suits are different makeups, and then also just highest number wins. So you're always kind of bidding and predicting on what you think's going to win, because it's must follow, but it's highest number. So you're looking at everyone's cards backs and you're trying to judge off that. It was like a nice, quick, because it's also like 18 card deck or something, small, compact way to do like a Skull King Wizard variant. It was great. There's fun little like negotiation you can do. It's tight, it's slick, doesn't do too much, and it definitely feels like maybe a fun way to teach Skull King if you just wanted to do like a really quick like bidding informed thing, especially because I feel like card games like Scharfschatten, where you can see the suit on the back of the card, is a really nice way to teach trick taking. Obviously in this one, bidding is a little bit tough. I don't like bidding in my teach trick taking games, but this one's so quick, and you can kind of walk players through it. I could see this being a good kind of light, quicker trick taking game. So that was fun. Mesozoic. Then we played a bunch of the new all-play small box, super small box games, which I think people have heard about. Yeah, I've seen this talked about. They are really tiny, and they're all art by Saibapu, which, oh, we love Saibapu. So the first one I played was Panda Panda, and it's this game where on your turn you can either draw a card from either someone's discard pile or from the top deck, or you can discard a card face up to the discard pile. And as your hand gets lower, it gets easier to make the melds, but the cards are, I think, harder to get. Whereas as your hand gets bigger, it makes it easier to make a meld, but your hand gets bigger. I think the premise is interesting because you just, once you make the meld, sorry, I didn't explain this, you just go out. It's like a one and done thing. So for example, it's like A through E, and if you start with like 5 cards or so, if you discard down to like 2 cards, you just need like a B and an F, or like a C and a D. But it's hard to kind of get there. If you're down to 3 cards, you need like 3 C's or something, which is also kind of hard. But then you can go up to try to get some stuff, and those are more common, but then you have to like be grabbing a lot. And anytime someone plays an A, you actually pass a card to the left. So it's like this lighter kind of try to make a meld and then go out. It was interesting. I won it back to back, undefeated. It was cool. It's like light. I think this is kind of where they're trying to be at with these small games. Because then we played Fairy, which is a wild game. The premise is, first off, which I absolutely love, you take a card and you put your finger on it, and that's the score track. So this is like your score track. So every time you get a point, you move your finger along the score track. You're keeping track of your score as you hold this, which people might be like, whoa, I have to hold the score track the whole game? The game's super quick. It's like very light. The premise is it's 1 to 21, and you flip over a card, and that is like your base number. And then players on the count of 3 are going to guess whether the next card is higher, lower, in the same range. And the ranges are like, there's 3 different ranges, like 1 to 9, 10 to 17, and like 17 to 21 or something. Or one of the 3 fairy cards in the game. And the less chance, or like the bigger risk of a guess, the more points. So the fairy is like a 1 in, like 9 or something, but it's more points than just saying it's higher or lower. So it's fun. It's like a really quick, like push your luck stat game. It was great. It's a good time. Also has some of the best sci art ever. Oh my gosh. Then we played Wray, which is more pertinent to this channel. It's a trick-taking game where you roll 2 dice, and on those dice, the pips, are 2 different bids, because if it's duplicate, you just re-roll. And you have to hit one of them. Pretty clean, pretty clever. But what's also pretty clean and pretty clever is your cards have ranks on the top, and you're going to play 6 tricks with the ranks on top, and then you're going to flip them and play 6 tricks with the ranks on bottom. And the cards are like, if it's strong one way, it's weak the other way. So it's really cool, because you're trying to hit your bid, and you know, oh, this card is going to get really strong later, so maybe I don't play it yet, and I need like one more trick. There's also some really cool stuff where if you roll a 6, it's either 0 or 6. And there's like flexibility always. You always have 2 numbers you try to hit. Really clean. It's one of the cleanest, just like straightforward designs. It feels like one of those ones that players are just like, hey, do you want to play like a really quick trick-taking game? That's definitely solid, great choice, and is unique. And I'm just like, yeah. The production's really fun too. So Wray, sensational. Probably have a video for it out soon. And the other one, which was an older hit, or older game, called Neon. I don't think it was a hit, but I'm surprised it wasn't. It's called Rainbow now, or it originally was Rainbow, then Neon, now it's Rainbow again. But the premise is, first off, Psy art, it's just unicorns. It's the cutest, they have little shoes. Oh, but the premise is, it's a climbing shedding game in a way. You can play whatever you want. You don't need to technically play higher, but the higher you play means you get to win more points. So you can kind of play whatever you want. But the cards that you play become the points that players take in the next trick. So say, for example, I play 2 6s, you play a 5, someone else plays 2 1s or something. You're going to rank yourselves, like I played the strongest, right? And then the person who played like a 5 played the weakest, or whatever the ranking system is. We're going to get some points. But then those 2 6s go out there, the 5 goes out there, and the 2 1s go out there for the next points. Wild. So then you play again. So it's one of those things where, like, do you play strong because you think you're going to play strong again and win? Or do you play low because you don't think you're going to win the next trick? Really interesting. It's cool that the players are the ones playing the cards that then make the scoring for the next trick. Really fun things you can do with it. Can't wait for people to see it. It's kind of what I love of these like small packages, is like super tight game, super quick rules you can get playing really fast, and it's so small. It's like the size of a phone, kind of, the game box. So that's great. Oh, Inside Beppet War. Oh, can't gush about that enough. The other things we did, we actually played the Boy and the Giant again, which I have over here. It was interesting. It was interesting to show people again and see how the systems, if you're not familiar, I chatted about it a little bit before, but the premise is you're all playing kind of like Monster Trick, you're all playing 2 different tricks, but there's 2 suits in the game, and they make up kind of trees. They're called trees, where there's a card in the center as a trunk, and then you play the leaves on the trunk. Like in a 4-player game, if this was the trunk, the person sitting over here would play here, the person sitting over here would play here, and then here and here. So it's like a trunk and then like 4 leaves. But if the trunk is blue, one of the suits, the lowest wins, and if the trunk is red, the highest wins. And the winning player will like draft cards once the tree is like complete. It's really interesting. There's a funny flow to the game, a funny rhythm to the game. I'm liking it more as I play it more. So I'm super excited. Hopefully do a review for it. It's by the people who do Cabernet Stitch, which I think is one of my favorite games in a while. So we haven't covered Cabernet Stitch, but spoiler alert. Anywho, it has some clever moments that I think were subtle and were more interesting once I got playing them. So that was The Boy and the Giant. Next, we play Things and Rings. It's an all-play title that's coming out that is essentially deduction and timeline, if that makes sense. So if you've played Timeline, the premise is it's a bunch of these events, like either inventions or maybe when a book got written or a CD came out in history, and you're trying to play a card correctly into a timeline. And if you do, it stays out there, and you're trying to get rid of your cards, so you want that to happen. But you're slowly building this timeline, so it's getting harder to play cards out onto the timeline because you have to play it in the correct spot. So that's what it feels like. Things and Rings is kind of like that. There's 3 rings in the standard game, and one of them is where, because all the cards in your hands are different words, so like a chainsaw or like a hospital or things like that. And they're illustrated in this wonderful like Dr. Seuss art, which is so great. But the ring could be like, oh, this is about the word. So whether the word has like double vowels or is only 3 letters long or things like that. And then another one is like, so that's like about the word itself. And another one's like about the word actually. So if it was a chainsaw, it's like, oh, this has metal or something. And the last ring is like what context it's in. So whether it's found outside or whether it's smaller than a car. And what's wild is you don't know what those rules are. And so you're like putting your cards out, and it's a Venn diagram. So it can go in the circles, it can go in the middle of the circles, it can go in the very center, or it could even go outside the circles. So you're trying to play, and it's like deduction mixed with kind of like a little bit of like a push your luck. But what's wild is, which I really love, this is like my main thing, I feel like Jamie Stegmaier right now, my favorite mechanism of things in rings, is you can always win on your turn. So a thing in timeline, which stinks, is you can just get behind someone. Like you can get a card behind, like if you mess up. And then like even if you do perfect from then on out, if they do perfect, you can't win. But in things in rings, when you get one right, you just go again. So you could like get them all right. Obviously that's really hard at the start because you don't know the rules. So the game kind of does naturally lead to where players usually all have a good amount of equal turns. But it's really cool. You can never like be fully out of it, which I really, really love. Then we showed off She Know Who Dealer, which was so great. We showed off the A side just to teach the rules, and then the B side to really get into the game. I love the B side. I gotta say it. If I'm playing that game, I'm playing the B side. The A side, again, is a fun way to teach, but I don't know if I'd ever asked to play A side. I think B side is fascinating now. But yeah, A side, what's the opposite of fascinating? Yeah, I think it's good to teach. So yeah, I've never, the more I play again, especially a game with 2 modes, I've never like waffled so much on it as I have Shinoho Dealer. So B-side was a great time. It was fun to show someone that. And we also played Bug Council Backyardia with the same group. It was really, really fun. 3 players, Bug Council is just, oh, chef's kiss. I absolutely love it at 3. It's so much fun. I know there's expansion coming out, which is great. Check out the video for Bug Council. There's a lot of great game in that Mancala trick-taking game. Then we played an interesting late-night version of Ito. Ito is kind of like the Mind meets Wavelength. We played it with kind of like a deck of 100. I think we actually did play it with the Mind. It was great. It was a good time. I do like Wavelength a lot more, and I do like the Mind a lot more. But as a fun little experiment, it's a good time. We played Ito Rainbow, which is much, much, much better rules than Ito. And I hope those are the rules that are in the new American release by Arcane Wonders, but we'll see. Then, oh, I got to play, this was so great. Amanda and Crystal were at Banzinator's meetup. Banzinator was so nice. She was throwing this meetup that was full of prizes and pizza. It was so great. It was in the trading card game room, and it was so wonderful. I got to go there and see some wonderful people again. I ran into Ruel. Oh, Ruel was so amazing to talk to. He had just gone to Gamma, and I really want to go to Gamma, so I was fascinated to hear how it went, and it was so great. We ended up playing games, which I'll chat about in a little bit, but it was so cool. It was so cool to see everyone there. And I got to show Amanda and Crystal Sears catalog, which was really, really fun. It's always a little nerve-wracking to show your own game, but they were so nice. And I got to show it to someone who was like, oh, what are you playing? I'm like, oh, come sit down. And I'm always nervous to teach the game because it's climbing shedding, but there's like a twist on climbing shedding. But they had played a lot of Teach You. So it was really, really nice to be like, okay, it's kind of like Teach You. So we can hit the ground running. And that was great. It went great. It went so well. Okay, that was most of the games I played, besides some other ones which I'll chat later. Time to talk about the wildest things that happened at Dice Tower West. We're covering the panel now. Whew! Then the fact that someone who will not be named was wearing clothing that I wore, and then also the duplicate sale tournament. Whew! Let's start off with the panel. The panel! Okay. The panel was fascinating. I was so excited to do the panel. Again, I tried to do it to where it was a good mix of theme, but also still related to trick taking. Because Amy and Maggie, amazing Amy and Maggie, agreed to do the panel. And I was so nervous because I had some wild jokes in it, and I'm kind of a maniac. But they were so kind. And I love how they approached the theme of a trick-taking game. Also, Chris did an amazing, exhaustive list of some wonderful trick-taking games that were so thematic. And I, playing a little bit of the DJ, tried to pick ones that were a little bit on each of their lists, but then also kind of filling in the gaps of things that they hadn't picked. So my list, was it the most thematic, or did it just work perfectly for the panel? You tell me. Anyway, we were scheduled for a certain time on Friday. Thursday night, I was putting together the slideshow. And you know, did I start it at 3 a.m. that morning, Friday? Yes. Do I make my best jokes at 3 and 4 a.m.? No, they were all wild. I have a joke in there where I do a call and response. You'll just have to watch. You tell me how the jokes landed. But it was so much fun. The wild thing was I was working on it kind of 10 minutes before the panel. I leave my hotel room and I'm walking. Bloop, 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 bloop. I get to the panel. I'm setting up. Everything's cool. I'm talking to Amy and Maggie. I'm talking to Chris. Everything's nice. People are filling in. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh no, I can't attach my laptop. And this happened last year. And thankfully last year I brought my adapter, which I actually have right next to me, this little guy. But this year, I forgot I needed this. And it was up in my hotel room, which was half a mile, I don't know how far away. And the panel started in 8 minutes. So I sprinted. I left. I sprinted as fast as I could. I made it to the hotel room in 6 minutes. I ran into someone in the elevator who watches the channel. Hello, Nathan. They're like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, good. I'm about to be on a panel soon. It's like, oh, good luck. Thanks for the videos. I was like, thank you for watching. And I sprinted out of the elevator on to my room, grabbed this, ran back, and it was playing Mambo number 5 as I was sprinting through the hotel. So I'm sweating, running. I'm gonna make it there time-wise a minute after the panel starts, so I already feel so guilty. And it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, everybody. It was insane. It was like a little bit of Monica in my life, and I'm like sprinting, and all the slot machines are going off, and it smells like smoke. It was wild. And I get there at 3:01, and I had set this camera. I'm pointing like you can see. That's a camera right there. And I set the camera in the middle, and it's pointed at the stage, but it wasn't like recording yet. And I run in, I sprint in, and I run in the middle, and I hit record, and I jump up on the thing, and I'm plugging this in. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And trying to like get it going. And of course, the projector wasn't working. Of course. And so I'm like flustered and like nothing's working, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I try to explain things, and it's just wild. It was way more people than last year. I think last year, I don't quite remember how many went, but I want to say at least 4 times as many as last year. It's the ThinkerThemer effect, I swear. They bring a crowd. They do. Amy and Maggie are popular. They are very popular. And it was wonderful. So I am nervous. I am terrified. You know, there's a lot more people, and Amy and Maggie are there, and Chris is there, and I don't want to put on a bad show. And so I'm stressed, and I'm trying to get this up, and Maggie, the amazing Maggie, goes over, and it just wasn't turned on. The projector just wasn't turned on. And I was so flustered. I was like hitting home and like lens, and I was doing all this wild stuff. But Maggie's just amazing. So thank you again to Maggie for helping me with the projector. Once it got on there, we were going, we were sailing. And maybe pause now if you haven't seen the panel and wanted to watch it. But it went really well. The format, which I should have articulated better, I definitely did not. I never know what to do on crossovers. I'll watch the Dice Tower top 10s or other top 10s, and sometimes people will have crossovers. And usually, here's my issue with crossovers. They always happen because you do a top 10 from bottom to top. And so if there's a crossover, it happens earlier on someone's list, which they are maybe still excited about the game, but it's lower for them. Maybe it's their 8. And they're like, yeah, this game is blah, 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 blah. And the other person, it's like their 3 or 2. And so they're super excited to talk about it. And they're like, but they can't like reveal it's higher up. So they're just like, yeah, it's a good game. And then when it gets to top 3 or 2 and it gets back to that other person who had it really high up, they're just like, oh, I had it too. It's a crossover, and they like talk about it. And I don't know, maybe this is personal, but like I feel like there's a little bit of like a deflated vibe where it already got talked about earlier, so you're like, and I think it's good also, you know? But you should be the one to talk about it even more. You're more excited. So my idea to solve the crossover problem that doesn't exist and isn't a problem and to most people was whenever there was a crossover, boom, it would just say crossover and it would skip. So the person was skipped. Cool in principle. In practice, what I didn't realize is not only is it incredibly disorienting for the panel guest you have who doesn't know what's going on, they're prepping to talk about a certain game, and then you're just like, oh, it's a crossover, and next. So like Chris Wray was about to talk about his number 10, but it was a crossover. So I was just like, ooh, you got a crossover, and I skipped him. And he's like, okay. And then it would move on sometimes, like if I had a crossover, it would move on back to someone who had like just talked. Like I think Amy and Maggie talk, and then like Chris and I both had crossovers after. So then it goes back to Amy and Maggie, and so they're like, oh, we're talking again, like right after. So it was insane. It was a wild idea. Maybe with more prep, more communication, I could see it going well. Because, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the panel, after the crossover, so if someone had a number 8 that was the same as someone's number 4, for example, when it got to the first person's number 8, we just had a crossover, boom, skipped them. And when it got to the other person's number 4, we said crossover, boom, skipped them. And we go through all people's top whatever, right? So then we get to number 1s, we do all the number 1s, and then we go crossover land. We go to crossover land, where in crossover land, then we rank everyone's crossovers, so actually the highest crossover is ranked the highest. So if there's 2 crossovers, those were ranked, and we actually had 1 triple crossover, so that was at the end, which I think, in the list, a triple crossover, it's got to be the strongest. Like I was watching Top 100 Games of All Time by the Dice Tower maybe a year or 2 ago, and yes, Tom may have a number 1 that's different than Z's number 1, and you know, they move around. But I think one year, there was like 5 people, it was like Tom, Z, was it Sam? And People's Choice and Mike or something? I don't quite remember. But it was one year where, yes, they all had different lists, but Blood Rage was on every single one of their lists. And it was like relatively high too. And I'm just like, that's got to be the number 1 game. Why don't we rank it like that? So I just loved that idea. So, wild concept. I'm glad they stuck with it. That explanation I did to you was something I did not do during the panel. So sorry for everyone in the audience, and especially Chris and Amy and Maggie, because all that would happen was I would say crossover, and I kept going. So that was absolutely wild. And the intro itself, I had this call and response bit, but I realized I started the panel with like 10 minutes of just solid jokes without Amy and Maggie or Chris saying anything, which isn't right. You know, you invite people on the panel, they gotta talk. So it was just wild. I was like doing bits and I was doing jokes, and then I was like, oh, okay. So Amy and Maggie, thank you for being here. Would you like to say anything? It was wild. Anyway, I hope people had fun. It was so kind. So many people showed up. Monique and Naveen were there. Oh, they were so kind. I've never met them. I've watched their videos for so long. In fact, their Cat in the Box video was so useful early on to model when I went to PAX Unplugged and was teaching Cat in the Box. I was like, what's a perfect, succinct way to teach this game, which is a complex game to teach? And they did so well, so I tried to mirror what they did off that. So I watched that video a ton, and they were just amazing. And then in person, they're absolutely amazing. So it was great to meet them, chat with them. And then Banzinator was there. Daniel was there. And so many people came up after and were like, thank you so much. It was so much fun. And yeah, it was just like overwhelming sensation of, like I said, it's nerve-wracking to do a panel. And once it's over, there's like this wash of like, it is done. A battle well fought and over. But it was good. And I had this contest where oh man, people who, that's never good. When you play so many games, you refer to people in the world as players. What am I talking about? But people, I guess players in the trivia game, people could message what they thought was the #1 most thematic game, and the person who gets the highest would win a prize. I got to give out a copy of Xylotar, which was great. And also the picks that Amy, Maggie, and Chris had were just amazing. Chris picked 6 of 8, which was, it's just such a wonderful thematic game. I looked over because it's right there. It looks probably weird that I just looked over. But yeah, he picked this one, which, again, we have a video on it, but it just is so thematic. And also, Amy and Maggie picked Rebel Princess as their #1. And when they were talking about how it feels, just to like push off all these proposals, it was just so fun. Please watch it. They do better justice than I ever could. And the fact that the panel ended with Chris being like, hey, people are saying we're in a trick-taking renaissance, but I think we are actually going to be in the trick-taking enlightenment, where there's so much more that trick-taking games can do. And he made a statement which I absolutely love, where watch it, even though I think the camera cut off before he finished, but he's like, the most thematic trick-taking game has not been made yet. Go make it. Like, everyone should make games. And it was moving. I absolutely loved it. So, but yeah, thank you so much to Chris, Amy, and Maggie, and everyone who came out and watched such a wild panel. I hope you enjoyed it. It was very fun to make, stressful and nerve-wracking, because public speaking is tough, but so much fun. So thank you so much. Before I cover the other two things, like the sale tournament and someone wearing my face on their clothes, I do want to say I played 2 deck building games that were wild. Jumble Order, I played with Dan from Ninja Star Games, which was great, and Amy. It is absolutely wild. It's by Muneyuki Yokauchi, who did Cat in the Box. And it is wild. Like it's almost like Challengers, but a deck builder. I guess Challengers was kind of a deck builder. But you just flip over cards. And the order is like really important because you're trying to also flip over like numbers in a sequence. It was wild. Really good stuff. And then in the Outback, I played Avant-Garde with Dawn, and everyone is so amazing in the Outback. This Outback is this place where so many of the ThinkerThemer fans community are there, and it's just so wonderful. Everyone's so nice. It's I think my goal for next year is to have the trick-taking banner next to the Outback. Can I say that out loud? I don't want to jinx it, but it is just the most welcoming, kind place that you can just walk up and everyone's so nice, and you can just play a game with the nicest people. So I want the banner to be close by, so that when people migrate around, you can see the Outback, see how wonderful it is. Love the Outback. So the other two things. I was playing on Thursday a game, and person who will not be named because I don't know if they are embarrassed of what they did, I will not name them. They know who they are. So, some context. This person knew of this. Oh wow, how do I tell the story? Sorry, I should start back at 1. These socks. Some of you may notice these socks. Some of you may notice this person. This is Taiki Shinzawa, the premier trick-taking designer. So I went to Tokyo Game Market and I wore one of these socks when I met Taiki, and I showed him this sock. And he was surprised, bewildered, unsure that I wasn't a maniac. And it was a wonderful time. And from my point of view, I was like, this is great. I have your face on a sock, especially a sock with hearts on it. I hope that is fun and cool, and thank you for designing trick-taking games that are great. That is the context for the story. Flash forward to Dice ROS, and Thursday night I'm playing games with some people, and one person, who again will not be named, leaves to say they're going to the bathroom. So we're waiting there, we're chatting, just hanging out, waiting for them to get back. And they show up wearing an entire full suit with my face on it. I cannot tell you that feeling of utter surprise. I don't think I've ever been so shocked in my life. When someone has your face on their clothing, a lot of your face on the clothing, and especially when there's like lips that are biting the mouth, there's the word love. I love bits. I love jokes. I love gags. I love goofs, gaffes. I love them all. That literally blew me away. It was so funny and so wild and so unpredictable, especially Thursday night. Of all nights, I was blown away. Blown away. I mean, I'm retroactively speechless. I was so speechless then. I like fell to the floor. I was laughing, but shocked. So I would have like waves of like quiet, like, is this real? Because you go through all these things, right? You're like, why did you make this? How did you make this? What are you gonna do after? Is it going to the trash? You can't wear this. You can't wear that outfit. It was 2 faces of mine. I think both screenshots from videos. One from the Haggis video where I'm in a hot dog costume with ketchup on my nose, where I'm like, oh, it smells like ketchup in here. It's wild. So I was blown away. And the person that did this is a friend. I should have started with that. And I absolutely loved it. It was one of the funniest things ever. And we eventually, after I think like 20, 30 minutes, got back to the game we were playing. And I couldn't believe it. I kept looking up from my hand and seeing it and just being blown away. And yeah, we kept playing games for like an hour or so. And then what was funny was we're walking back and we're with some people who haven't met Amy and Maggie, and we're walking by the Outback. And I'm like, oh, I'll go see if Amy and Maggie's in there. And I kind of forgot momentarily that the person was still wearing the suit. And we walk in to the Outback where there's a bunch of people, and I'm there, and then the person next to me has a shirt with my face on it, and everyone's like, what? So I got to relive, again, this wild experience of someone having my face on an entire outfit, because it was top and bottom, as you can see. So absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much to this person who I do not know if they want their name said. Literally, easily, one of the best bits ever. Thank you. Whew. Finally, on to the wild. Duplicate sale tournament. So, what does that all mean? Duplicate is a thing where it's in like, you can do it with a lot of different games, but duplicate bridge is the most common, where essentially you shuffle, you deal hands, and then you duplicate those hands. So you see what cards goes to like north, what cards goes to southwest, east, what cards everyone gets, and you duplicate that along the different teams so that each team has the same hand, so even though it's random, it's set, meaning that everyone works with the same thing. And then it's how well do you do the same thing. And this is also seen in pandemic tournaments, where in pandemic tournaments, everyone gets the same characters, the same hands, and the deck of, when the pandemic cards come up and the other city cards come up, they're all in the same order. So then it's more about how do you handle the same random situation as everyone else? How well can you do that? So I had that idea for sale, and what was interesting was we ended up having, I think, five teams, because it was the amazing Mike DeLisio and Chris Yee who agreed to this wild idea. They came, they were on a table in the middle, and then to the left and right of them were people that showed up. I think one group hadn't played before, so we're doing the rules teach, but I didn't know how many people were going to show up. So we had games sealed, ready to handle new people. And then when people showed up, we're like, okay, we're playing. So we had to unwrap and start setting up a game if someone showed up. So we eventually had 5 teams. So we had 5 different games set up. And again, since it's duplicate, everyone has to have the same deck and the same hand and see how they do, right? But, as you may know, in Sail, you can attack the Kraken and remove a card from the deck at different rates, which makes the second hand wildly different. Especially if you do really poorly, or if you run over a tentacle space, you're going to add cards to the deck at different rates as well. So you can't actually do a duplicate second hand. So you see where the problem lies. Also, how hard do you do Sail? Sail is a very, very hard game. I've never beaten the 5th scenario, which I guess is the 6th scenario, I guess, in the intro. It's very hard. It's super, super hard. We probably, in retrospect, should have done maybe scenario 2 or 3. I ended up doing scenario 4, and I'll tell you how that went in a little bit. But going back to the setting up. So we set it all up. We put up giant dividers. Someone had a great idea. They were like, go rent Captain Sonar from the library. So I went and got Captain Sonar. We had long dividers blocking what people could see. And what was wild was the amazing, Chris, Wray, and Danique, so helpful. She was just amazing, helping out with running it. Because what happened was they played the first hand, and then I had to get everyone's deck, pull it off to the side at different times, right? Because I'm trying to be as fast with the turnover as possible so we can get into the second round as quick as possible. So I was taking people's decks. I had to shuffle one of them, flip over the hands for each of them, and be like, okay, this is what we're going to make all the rest of the decks like. But that deck could have a different amount of Kraken cards depending on if they attack the Kraken or win over a Kraken spot and actually got more Kraken in their deck. So what happened was we had to shuffle, do it duplicate, and then bring over the other decks and remember which deck was which table. This was wild, by the way. Anyway, thank you so much, Chris and Danique, again, for keeping it all straight. But so then you had to shuffle that. Or no, what am I talking about? Then you would take any subsequent deck, flip it over, and sort out the hands, because you're trying to make it as similar as possible. And then when there was a discrepancy, you would shuffle random and deal one of the remaining cards to the hand. I hope this makes sense. So we had to do that. Wild. Thankfully, we only had to do it once, because getting back to what I said earlier, starting with scenario 4, there are 5 teams. 4 of the teams died in practically the same spot on the map, which is wild how that happened.
Close to what they're doing, right?
Whoa.
Right.
That's right.
It's a cooperative game. Right. We're all trying to die on the same spot.
They all cooperatively died the same way.
You all died on the same horizontal. They also died on the same horizontal. So it's first place and a 4-way tie for second.
I think what I love about duplicate games is everyone got dealt the same thing, and how do you handle it? Well, everyone had the same pirates, everyone had the same hands, somehow everyone went to the same side. They all went left. They all ran into a wall, and they all died in the same spot. Fascinating. So funny how that happened. And it's funny because everyone was like, "Oh, we're doing so poorly. We're gonna lose." And I was like, "You're kind of there." So I did 4 teams. There was one team who not only made it past the second round, they almost beat level 4, which, if you've played Sail, is very hard to do. So the fact that they almost did it just in the middle of a tournament, they got to the 5th hand and they were 1 space away. So they almost did it. It was wild how close they did it. But what was funny was, so everyone thinks like, oh, like they all died in the second round, right? And they're all just like, like, wow, we did really poorly. But since 4 of the 5 teams had all died, we were able to just be like, that was the end of the second round, everyone, and reveal. And we all just like lifted the dividers, and everyone looked around and was like, did we all die at the same spot? It was hilarious. So it was great. It was so wonderful. I think doing a duplicate Sail tournament is very hard, so I don't know if I'll do it again. I think duplicate like Bacon or something, or duplicate a game where players don't change hand size would be much easier in the future. But it was so much fun, so many laughs, and thank you again to Chris and Denique who helped facilitate it. It was absolutely a dream. And congrats to the winners who not only survived longer than the other 4 teams, but also made it to the end. It was wild. So that was such a highlight. And Chris and Mike were just great for competing. It was absolutely wonderful. And just the con as a whole was great. It was wonderful. James Nathan showed up and had a wonderful array of all these wacky games. I mean, he was the one we played the wrestling one with. And also I got to play Mike Delicio's I'll Make You a Mixtape. Let Me Make You a Mixtape game, where it's kind of like this flowing, very thematic. It's really awesome how the theme was tied to the mechanisms. The premise is like you're building a mixtape, A side, B side, and you have to have the flow of the songs go into each other. So like if a certain song was a little bit brash, or it wouldn't really flow into like a more mellow song. So you wanted to actually create a playlist. So thematic, so fun. Also set collection on genre, which was great. We were also talking about how fun it would be if like you could take a photo and turn it into a playlist at the end. Oh, so wonderful. But that was such a hoot. And also, I mean, speaking of Dice Tower members that I got to play a prototype of, I got to play Chris Yee's, I think it's called Fruit Smoothie working title. And it was so cool. This, dare I say it, Knizia-esque idea where the players are really in charge of how the game's going to go. You essentially have these 4 suits or something, different fruits, and you can play to any one of them. And if you play the same card of the same suit, you're going to bump that value of the card in your hand. So you're kind of like, so say for example, I play a banana from my hand, a 2 banana, and I put it onto the banana thing face down. I'm now making the banana stock go up, because that's the value. But I lost a banana stock. Oh no. So it's this tension of like, how do you use cards? Because if you put a banana stock in a non-banana fruit area, you're lowering that stock by that amount. So players are kind of have like a shared incentive sometimes. Also, it's face down. And I love this mechanic so much. Once everyone reveals face up, it actually triggers the end of the game. So sometimes it's like face up, and the last person's like, do I do face up because I'm going to end it? Or do I just play another card? And then it kind of resets that timer. Great stuff. I can't wait to see where both of those games go. So much fun. And I had some wonderful moments of showing some games that will not be announced for a little bit, but it was wonderful. I played with Paula, the brothers Murph, who I also met for the first time, and I can't talk about it yet, but it was so much fun to show them, and playing with Ruel, and we got some wonderful games in. It was really fun. There's something to showing off some fun prototypes to people who are really excited about like what the prototype is. That is just so fun. There's something to just like spreading like inherent joy that just is so exciting. I absolutely love it. So overall, an absolutely wonderful con. It had everything, you know? It had familiar faces that are just absolutely the best. It had wonderful gaming moments, wonderful just people moments. I actually went on, this was wild. I went on something called Dining in the Dark. Felt like an escape room mixed with a restaurant. The premise is you put away your phones and anything that can turn on light, and you follow the waiter. You do kind of like a conga line, and they have night vision goggles on, and they'll lead you into a pitch dark room. You can't see your hand in front of you, nothing. They sit you down, you feel forward, you grab your plate, and they're like, here's the first course, and they don't tell you what it is. They're like, oh, it's a soup. Here's your spoon. Lean over. You can like kind of get a bib if you want it. Wild. It's completely dark. And you essentially hang out in the dark for like an hour or two. Wild experience. And I did an escape room. It was an Alice in Wonderland escape room with Aubon and Carvin. It was so nice. It's one of those things where it's nice to kind of like leave the convention a little bit, especially Vegas has so much you can do outside of it. I think next time I should see a Penn and Teller show. But it was so wonderful. I got to play Sears Catalog with Tim Mativia, who runs the con. And it was great because he's a huge Tichu guy, so playing Sears Catalog where you don't want to shed was a nice little twist. And also at the end, which was great, he showed me some cardistry magic. It's always fun playing card games with someone who's really good at cardistry, and like they can play a card, like flip it up in the air and it perfectly lands, or like they're the ones shuffling and they're like doing cool cuts, or like one-handed cuts, and then like when they deal it looks really cool. Play trick-taking games with someone who's good at cardistry. I'm telling you, that's a good time. And the Outback was so amazing. We played so many wonderful games there, especially like late at night. We would play like telestrations where people, 2 a.m. just leads to some wonderful games of telestrations. I tell you what, everyone there is so welcoming. So it was so fun to just see familiar faces like Lisa and Cherry. Anyway, I can't rant enough about how fun Dice Tower West is. Like, panel, so fun. People, so fun. David and Edward. And just the games, so fun. So please, next year, come on down. I sadly didn't get to do the Hearts tournament this year. There's too many fun things. Next year I really, really have to. I heard that was also really, really fun. They finally did it to where you could pass left, right, across, as opposed to last year. And also this year I think they didn't allow putting points into the first trick, which is, if you know my trick-taking origin story, a scarring traumatic experience. So I'm so glad that the Hearts tournament is also sounding amazing this last Dice Tower West. So I just cannot wait. Actually, also personally brought a bunch of trick-taking games into the library. Like I brought American Bookshop and the kind of newer titles from Tokyo Game Market. So it will even have more trick-taking games available to people. So if you want to, play the new hotness like Rebel Princess or whatever, you can always come down. So thank you so much. It was an absolute joy if we played a game. Like even one of the prototypes that you brought, which was really fun. I played with like Mike, and we had a wonderful time playing prototypes. We played this one prototype where it was like engine building. You like build a town, and depending on how well you did in like your bid on how many parts of your town you could build, like how many buildings, they would turn into like engine building. So like one of them let you like discard a card at the end if you didn't really want it, and things like that. That was a great prototype. We played a lot of really fun prototypes. I could do a whole video on those. But this video is already too long. Thank you so much, everyone and anyone who came and say hi. It is truly, truly so much fun. So please come down. Thank you for watching such a crazy video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you later. Bye.